Hi, everybody. Welcome to this special evening live discussion I'm doing today on how to use your intuition for language facilitation. My name is Marcy Melzer, and I am an intuitive speech and language pathologist, and I help parents teach their children how to use the words they need to share their wisdom with the world. And I do that with my Waves of Communication parent coaching program. And I see there's a bunch of people joining me. Thank you so much for jumping on this live today. Ashley and Tammy, hi Tammy, and Kelly and Rachel. So glad you guys can join me here. I decided to do an evening live today because I usually do things during the day, and sometimes evening time might be a good time to jump on and talk about something. And today's topic is my favorite. The whole reason that I call myself an intuitive speech and language pathologist is because I use my intuition professionally, and I coach my parents in how to use their intuition to help their children. And I think that it's the secret to really helping kids learn to use their words naturally. And it's the secret to parents being so successful at this, because they're the ones who can intuitively connect to their kids. So what I'm going to do on this discussion today is I've sort of got some notes here. I'm formatting it out because I didn't want to miss any important points. So I'm just going to dig in. I'm going to talk about what intuition is, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how intuition evolves in all of us. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about where that intuition comes from, and then dig in and tell you a little bit more about how to use it to help you with your kids and help them learn how to use words naturally and use your intuition as a tool for that. So, all right, let's get started with the whole idea of what is intuition. So intuition isn't something special that is just reserved for psychics and tarot readers and astrologers and stuff. It actually is a capability that everyone has. In fact, everyone uses it. And it's very, very powerful, actually. The people who have learned how to master how to use it have used it for a lot of different wonderful purposes. Of course, there's the people that you've heard of who are, yogis and gurus, who work in those circumstances. Oh, it just got noisy outside my door. And also there's the people who have used their intuition to do very well in business. Steve Jobs is a very good example of someone who has used their intuition to really innovate the world of technology. And he was widely known to freely access his intuition in all different kinds of ways. And he really used those intuitive messages that he received from wherever, we're going to get into that, to help him make the decisions he made to really make big changes. And I think that that's what it is about language facilitation, and anything actually that we decide to do to really make big changes about ourselves. And with language facilitation, we're taking children and changing them from using one form of communication into using another form of communication, which is a really big change. And I've made a lot of personal changes myself using my intuition. I changed my physiology. I've lost 75 pounds now, and it kind of keeps dropping off, and it's not by even any choice. It's more the lifestyle that I've created just requires less physiology for me to exist. So I'm actually getting lighter because I've completely changed my diet, and I did a lot of things to do that, to change myself personally, and I used my intuition to do that. So what is it? Intuition is that knowing, that you can call it a gut feeling, you can call it a idea that pops into your head, and it's really powerful because it usually evokes emotion in us, and it's emotion that guides our decisions. So that's why intuition is really important for us to all have and use in all of our things that we do in life. So how it evolves is actually from birth. We're, instilled with the intuition of fight or flight. And that's kind of how it starts with all of us. And that's the rudimentary intuition, the instinctive level of intuition that you see in animals and that you see in babies and you see in new moms that just knows exactly how to care for an infant from the second they're born, even though you've never had a baby before. It's a knowing that just exists in our genealogy, I think, from birth. And it's an ability to access information from other beings. So when you have a new baby, you access how to care for them and how to know them from them. Your baby's actually communicating to you energetically the kinds of things they need and the kinds of feelings they have. That's how you know. And so let's just call it what it is, parent intuition, okay? So that's what it is. And like I said, it starts out with knowing that very basic fight or flight, that very basic parent instinct. And then as you understand more about how to use your intuition in life, it refines a little bit and you get the messages, the gut feeling, the ideas, the knowing. Those things tend to be, instead of like fight or flight, more like, is this a good idea or not a good idea? And is that something that I want to explore more or something that doesn't, and the spiritual words say resonate with me? And I like that word resonate because I think ideas are energy. And because they evoke emotion in us and cause us to act, they're actually like catalysts, almost like a fire lights a match, or like a emotion lights a match, which can light a flame or light a spark that sets a whole fire, lights off a bomb. Ideas are like catalysts, and that's what comes to you with intuition. And that's kind of the neat thing about it. So anyway, as your intuition evolves, it actually gets perfected more. And the people like Steve Jobs and people who use their intuition knowingly, the people who tap into it regularly and use it to help them make their decisions, those are the people that learn to harness its power and help them decide things that in response to the energy that they see around them, just like you respond to your child when they cry. And so what I decided was to really try to dig in and figure out, so where does it come from? Like, how do we know these things? And for my own self, I got messages that it comes from the higher power. And whatever higher power you believe in or access, it could be God, it could be Buddha, it could be a guru, it could be energy, it could be you're not even sure what, it could be the energy of the planets and the universe. No matter what it is, when you believe in the idea that there is some force that's helping control everything else, and that there's some information out there that helps us make our decisions and decide what resonates with us and what doesn't resonate with us, because we're the only ones that make those decisions about whether we like something or don't, or whether we want to explore something or not. Those ideas are unique to everybody. So where did they come from? I think they come from a combination of things. So I think they come from God or the universe or angels or whoever you want to describe. I just say the universe because for me, I feel like I've had different kinds of entities talking to me over the years. Different times in my life, I prayed a lot to God. Other times in my life, I meditated and I resonated with other kinds of religious sorts of things. And then I just decided that, like I do my speech therapy and my language facilitation coaching, I use a little bit of everything. And when I just really evaluate the information that comes into me and decide if it's something that I think is a really good idea or I don't think is a good idea. And I really go with my gut feeling ahead of whether I think it's a good idea because other people think it's a good idea, or I think it's a good idea if it was what I read in a book or saw on a movie or watched somebody else do. When I decided on the decisions to make that were best for my own self and my own family and my own circumstance, that's when the decisions became effective. And that's when I decided to make really big changes in my life and develop something like Waves of Communication. So what I decided in all of that evolution is that, you know, I know that if I have this access to all this great information that's helped me make decisions that are helping other people help themselves, I know that I can teach other people to access that information too. And so the foundation actually of Waves of Communication is the energy waves of communication that start with our intuition, our intellect, not our intellectual, but our intuitive knowing of each other and the way we communicate with each other. And there's no greater intuitive bond than parents and their kids. And when I started to be able to understand and observe the energy of parents and their children communicating together, that's when I realized that that's what I need to teach parents how to do, is use that understanding of their kids' messages, whether they're verbal or nonverbal, and use that to help them teach their kids how to use language naturally. And so that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit about today, is how I tell these parents, like how they do it. Because some of the parents that I work with have talked about energy and talked about communication and do pray and communicate with God and higher powers. And they do often look for guidance in their life from the universe. And so I thought, well, why don't I help them understand that kind of guidance together with some guidance that they're getting from their kids and some guidance from me in the ways that I learned how to do it too. So there's two ways that you get this information. The first way is from God and the universe or wherever you call it. And the second is from your own records and observation skills and your own experiences and all the memory banks that you have in your head from your experiences from the time that you were born until you are now. And all of those experiences, every conversation, every funny, scary, crazy, loud, every experience you've had in your life is part of who you are energetically. All those things have happened to you, with you, about you, and you've participated in those things, and that imprints in you. And those little memories and ideas all together are your, what I call, bag of tricks, okay? And every experience you have with another being, with another human being, your bag of tricks together develops. And that's how it goes with your kids. So from birth, you're starting to imprint, you know, from creation, you're imprinting. I mean, already your genes together, you and both parents genes together go together to make a new baby. So already you've imprinted on your baby, and energetically the baby's growing inside you and imprinting on you all that time, listening to you, understanding your energy, and they're part of you, you know, for the whole time they early start develop. And energetically, I mean, something that's part of you, obviously you connect with them forever. Your baby's always your baby. My babies are 20 and 23, and they'll always be my babies. And I'll always have that connection wherever they are in the world, even if they're not close by. I always kind of can have a feeling about them and know where they are. And there's no feeling like that you can get that's different, you know, that other than a parent connection like that with a child. And so here I have been presented in my life with hundreds, thousands of families, of children who aren't using language to communicate effectively. And what they were using instead, in most cases, was a combination of behaviors and engagement and nonverbal communication combined with this idea of energetically communicating to other people what's on their mind with facial expressions, with gestures, with some way to help amplify those ideas in their head in a way to get their communication partner, usually parents, first parents, of course, to understand their messages. And so, because that's how parents know. I mean, otherwise, how would they know? Every time I meet a new family, I've met 100 families now on the phone, and talk to them about their kids. And every family I ask them, how do you know what your child is trying to communicate to you if they're not using words? And in most cases, they have learned to observe their kids and know what's going on in a way that they aren't really even sure. They can't really explain. And so I help them pick it apart, and I talk about what is it about. Well, part of it is I know I want to avoid any behavior I don't want to see, like tantrums or crying or anytime my child's upset because they're frustrated. So I try very hard to help them communicate those messages, and I ask them to show me the kinds of things that they want. And so in addition to your child, you know, you've been sort of trying to read their mind from birth, intuitively guessing what they want, and you just sort of continue that as kids are late talking because they're not using words yet, and they're using other things, and they still continue to have experiences they're trying to communicate with you. So what I do with parents is I teach them how to understand and appreciate that communication is not in the real world, that it is in their heads, that their kids, who I call spirit kids, are so good at mentally and behaviorally communicating their ideas. They have trained you as parents to understand their messages because that's what's had to happen. They're finding the way that they know to communicate because words haven't worked, and you're responding to whatever they're finding to keep the peace so that you're able to keep at it, so that you're able to continue to know what they want and meet their needs just like you did when they were infants, okay? Even though their needs are getting more complex, you still need to understand what they are. But what happens is you fall into the trap of knowing, because you've learned to interpret your child's messages, whether they're mental or behavioral or whatever, in the way that they've shown you. And so what happens then is you fall into that trap of getting stuck there, where that kind of communication is enough for the child to get their needs met, and they never have to try harder at words because you understand them, and they know that you know what's going on. And so what ends up happening is then parents say, but wait a minute, it's not words, it's not always working, my child has more complex things to say, and they can't. And so now the tantrums are coming back again because their communication needs are more complex and I can't guess anymore. So what I teach parents to do is let your kids know that what they're communicating to you isn't able to be understood by other people, okay? It seems like it's simple, but you know that other people can't understand your child the way that you can. You know that. And that's why your child stays so connected to you, because you are their interpreter, you are their lifeline, you are their communication tool that they use to communicate with other people, and that's why they continue that connection with you. And so when you facilitate that by continuing to interpret your child's messages to avoid the behaviors, you continue to perpetuate your child's success in using those nonverbal ways. So what a language facilitator parent has to do is realize that what their child is communicating to them when they drag them across the room is not, I want a cookie, mommy. It's, come with me. Because if your child just looks at you sideways and you give them food, no one else in the world would be able to interpret that message. So if your child looks at you sideways and you know they want food, you need to put that into real words. Are you hungry? You know, you can't just give your child things because you know they want them. That's the first thing, okay? You have to stop that, because otherwise you're perpetuating that nonverbal, that telepathy, which is the word for that mental communication of ideas that's happening between that and the behaviors that you're observing and the instinct that you know about your child. All that stuff combined is where you get your ideas about what your child's trying to communicate. And the more you rely on your interpretation of what that message is, because you have that intuitive connection, the more you're perpetuating your child to be unsuccessful in verbal speech. That's the bad news, okay? So how do you stop that? You have to learn how to facilitate language in a way that's easy, happy, safe, and fun, okay? But the first step to doing that is to acknowledge your child's messages verbally, okay? If you think they're saying something with their behavior, if they're communicating a message to you, say it out loud. Just say it out loud so that they hear it. What is that message that they're trying to communicate? Is it get up off the couch when they're dragging you? Then that's what you should say. Because unless there's a cookie in your environment and you're talking about food, you know, it's not going to connect. The words don't ever connect with those intuitive messages. So that's the first step, is to stop relying on them only. And the second step is say it out loud, okay? So when you acknowledge what that is, then your child knows either you do understand them or you don't understand them. But at the very least, your child knows for sure that you understand their exact message. Okay? Because the more you leave up to interpretation as a parent, the more wrong you're going to be when you guess. As your kids get older, they have experiences outside of your field of vision, okay? If they're going to school, if they go to grandma's, if they spend time with the other parent, you know, if they're in the other room with a sibling and something happens and you're not there to see it, you're not going to be able to understand that message unless it is communicated exactly the way it is. So what you typically do is take your child and have them show you what it is, and then you give them language for it, okay? If you don't know, if you think you know, say it. If you really know, say it. Okay, but whatever your child is thinking, you have to say it out loud. You have to say it verbally so that they know that those are the words to represent what they're thinking. Okay, and that's the trick. That's the secret. Because most of the parents who have been in my program are so good at knowing their kids' communication methods, exactly what they're using to communicate with them. That especially when it's tough, when your kid's tired, when they're not feeling well, if you're running late, you know, it's always easier to go to the nonverbal methods to get the communication that you need. And nobody gives anybody, I mean, nobody's judging anybody for anything here. I'm just here to tell you this is what's happening, okay? Your kids are so good at communicating their messages to you intuitively. You need to start interpreting them out loud. And that's how you do it. That's how you help them bring those intuitive messages into the real world. Okay? And yeah, the other thing that's really, really important with these messages, and this is when your child's having difficulty, okay? When their messages are coming in the form of a tantrum or a behavior that is really communicating feelings, okay? You need to understand that that behavior is communicating those feelings, and verbalize and acknowledge those feelings for your child, okay? That's a huge step for parents who are doing language facilitation, is because those behaviors that your child is doing when they tantrum, you as a parent know the difference between a tantrum when they are frustrated and a tantrum when they are pissed off, for lack of a better word, when they're mad, all right? And if it's a frustration or it's an anger, you need to acknowledge the feelings that are behind that tantrum and verbalize them for your child, so that they understand that you understand this communication they're doing for you is not a behavior that they're trying to do to get some sort of reaction from you. All they want you to do is understand how they feel, okay? Any kind of behavior your child does. And when it comes down to big emotion behavior, either crazy, loud, and raucous, high energy, can't focus, woo, princess, blah, 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 that kind of energy, or angry, mad, strong energy, all of those energies are communication. Every facial expression, most kids who are late talkers, who have good receptive language, have amazing facial expressions. When your child gives you a look, any kind of look, interpret that in words, because that's how they're trying to communicate with you non-verbally. And if you allow that to go non-spoken out loud, then it's going to perpetuate that understanding is only happening with people on a non-verbal mental level. And your child's going to want to communicate with everybody. The best spirit kids, I just started with a new family. I'm really excited. I haven't even started their first session yet, but I just had their strategy session, and they were telling me about their son who, they are a military family, and they moved around quite a bit, and everywhere their son went, he made a special friend, primarily nonverbal child, always had a special friend, always connected with the teachers. Their boy is so good with his intuitive communication skills that he knows how to get everyone on board to understand exactly what he has. He's running the classroom for with their smart board in front of the class with minimal verbal communication skills, because he's so good at using the technology to communicate. Like, he learned how to do that and use that compared with his facial expression and gestures and ways to get other people to say words for him, that he's managed to get to be 6.5 years old and not have real effective verbal language, but still be incredibly socially communicative. It's amazing, and I can't wait to help this family turn their child spirit kid, for sure. This kid has learned how to connect with people's energy in a way that it took me years to figure out. He was born on the planet learning how to do it, and I can't wait to help his parents use that. So if your child is really good at communicating with you using the nonverbal stuff, and you're like, man, this is me, I know this, I know what my kid wants, and I just do it, then your child is a spirit kid. Your child is a kid who knows how to access their intuitive connection with other people, and that's how they communicate. But you need to help them understand. When I talk about, I help parents teach their children how to share their wisdom with the world, The world is not as advanced intuitively as your intuitively communicating child is. And unfortunately, not everybody in the world has that same connection. So you as the parent are responsible for getting them to bring those messages out to the real world. And the only way you're going to do that is by interpreting them in the moment. And that's what language facilitation is. So in the moment, when you think you know what your child says, or they're saying, or they're communicating one way or another, that's when you jump in and say it out loud. And that's how you're going to get them to do it. All right. So I see that a bunch of people have joined. I just got wrapped up into this. And so there's a few points. Let me see. Hi, everybody. I'm really so glad that you all are joining me today. Sorry, I know I just sort of jumped on here and sort of stopped midway. I'm really easily distractible. So I see my friend Izzy's here and Susan. Okay, so Susan says her son screams and yells all the time. He has words now, though. That's good. So that screaming and yelling, turn that into words, Susan. He wants me to do everything for him. He's almost 5. August still has some speech development delay, but at school he will be more independent. He knows how to go to the bathroom without me, but insists I go with him at home. He wants everything in a certain way. So more empathy. Question mark. So yeah, I mean, I think definitely kids know their comfort zone with parents, and they know what you know, and they, anytime kids, that's why a lot of kids learn to talk when they go to school. It sort of puts them outside of that comfort zone where, at school they can't interpret their messages and they're like, I guess I have to learn how to use words. So some kids do start to use words just when they get experiences with other people, new daycare providers, new schools. If they have a teacher or a parent who's doing some language facilitation, that person is automatically verbalizing the things that the child wants and showing them how, or showing them how to communicate in another way. Unfortunately, what happens a lot with kids who are really intuitively communicating like this, when they go to school, they're given structured communication like pecks or phrases like that, and that really mucks up that intuitive, natural language emergence for kids who are really intuitive. So be careful about that. So yeah, more empathy. Yeah, I mean, I think that, you have to learn what kinds of expectations you can have for him at home and create your boundaries in your household. It's all about pick your battles. He kicks and gets very mad. Wow, so that's really some kind of behavior that, Susan, you want to work out verbally. I think that acknowledging that those big behaviors are big feelings, and try to put some words with that, especially now that he is starting to use some language that you definitely want. And Rachel says, that's our Griff. His teacher just called me today to tell me more instances his intuitive connections as his classmates and other teachers. Rachel found me. Her son is the biggest spirit kid. So I'm really excited to help her teach her son and her little late talker, actually both of her kids, to get out of this primarily intuitive and nonverbal communication into using natural language in a way that can communicate with everybody and not just their special friends. Because, the kids who are so good at this kind of energy, I just can't even imagine the kind of amazing wisdom that they have to share with all of us. And that's sort of my secret love about working like this with families, is hearing the messages that they are interpreting from their kids and then actually seeing their kids start to use those messages verbally instead of these nonverbal ways. And they never give up that intuitive connection with their kids ever, but it's really, really cool. So I'm super glad that all of you have joined me today on this live. I'll be back actually on Thursday with my next live. I've got a parent on who has a very intuitive little guy who's 7.5, and she is a language facilitator parent. We're going to do a Q&A together and talk about her journey with an older late talker and how she was able to get her son to start to use natural language really quick. So I hope you can join me for that live on Thursday. In the meantime, if you have a late talking child and you are interested in learning how to help them use words naturally, like Rachel's going to do with her little guy and other parents too, you can reach out to me here, send me a message, or join my, or log on to my website at wavesofcommunication.com. I have a free class there for parents, which is the way to get started to find out more information about how Waves of Communication can help you help your child, your spirit kid, learn to share their messages verbally with the world. And I'll see you all soon on my next live. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hey, if you want to see more videos, I have a whole YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the description of this. You can check out more than 40 videos. I think there's like 50 now. Videos on my YouTube channel, all about language facilitation. There's more information on intuition and all different kinds of tips. I want to reach out to as many parents as possible to let you know that you can use your intuition to help your kids learn to use language naturally and really quickly. Within 3 to 6 weeks, every family in my program is watching their kids start to use natural language verbally, expressively. So I hope that you can join me and join us in our language facilitation community and get your child to using words too. Good luck on your language facilitation journey, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again for joining me.